Ruby Franke's husband has finally spoken out a couple of times through his lawyer. Some of it has our head scratching, some of it has us saying, huh, okay. But we're going to talk about all of it in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to, I would say, the pretend sofa, but clearly it's not here. In fact, you might be wondering, where is the sofa? Where is Roscoe? Why is Paul so dressed up? Well, I'm gonna tell you, so just hold your horses. Y'all, I'm coming to you, not live because this is pre-recorded obviously, but I'm coming to you from CrimeCon 2023 at, I believe it's 7 in the morning right now. So we're here, we just got here last night, and today is the first day of events. So I wanted to record this because I actually had recorded a video on an interview that the lawyer gave about this originally, and then he came out with this other one like the day I was leaving or whatever, and I was like, I can't use this now. I changed my mind about my opinions on some of this stuff. So I was like, I'm just gonna get up really early and record the video over again. Now that being said, we're out of our element. Now I can tell you this much, there is gonna be some background noise. Definitely the room next to me is vying for attention as to who can garner the most attention via being loud at 7 in the morning. Glad that I've been up since 5. Anyway, so just know that if you're new here, I appreciate you coming to hang out. Usually we're in a little room with a pretend sofa and my little dog Chihuahua. His name's Roscoe P. Coltrane. He serves as like the channel mascot. Okay, so anyways, what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be reviewing some video clips of the lawyer. Law and Crime did a couple of different interviews with him, and he answered a bunch of different questions. And then we're going to also look at, in between the two interviews, some clips of an interview that another dude, I'm going to call them victims of Jodi Hildebrandt, that he gave, because it lines up a lot with what other men are saying that they've kind of, how they've been victimized by Jodi and whatnot. So, and then we're just going to talk about all at the end of the video as well as throughout. So what I'm getting at is go ahead and buckle up and pull on up, because here we go.
He's busy, he's struggling, trying to make sense out of what's happened to him in the last 13 months and kind of coming out of a fog.
Now I wanted to start off with this because he'll get more into this throughout different parts of this interview and another interview. So essentially what we're looking at here is Kevin has been estranged from his wife Ruby for like, you heard, in like 13 months or so. She's basically had, and this is all alleged, right? We're one side of the story, that type thing. Complete control over this. She's been dictating what he needs to do, and what they're alleging is that this dictation as to, you need to stay away, this is how I'll fix our marriage, is via Jodi. So just consider that like building the foundation of some key components of what the video is going to be about, and let's roll tape.
So in other words, he was completely taken off guard by these allegations, completely shocked?
Absolutely shocked.
Okay, so now that you're sticking by this, and they go, like I said, a little bit more in depth on the next interview with, it's Jodi. Here is some questions that I see coming up a lot, and I'm curious from y'all, because again, it's almost like this timeline is being presented as he had no idea about this kind of stuff. He's been gone, so on and so forth, which could completely be legitimately true, right? I mean, again, remember, I don't know these people. I'm not part of the investigation, right? So I know just as much as anybody else. These are just my opinions and that only. Now, the thing that I see coming up, and that is questionable as well, is, well, what about before Jodi? What about some of these questionable things that she was doing on video, withholding food, this type of stuff? Or was Jodi in the picture at that point and all this was going on without the dad in the picture? I don't think that's how that went, but what I've seen a lot of feedback, comment section, that type of thing, are these questions there. Let's continue.
Sure. She had heard what was going on, and knew they were coming for her, and called him and said, this is an emergency, even though she hadn't reached out to him for months and months and months before that. She reached out to him when it was an emergency, knowing she could rely on him to help his kids.
Now again, if this alleged allegation is true, okay, this speaks volumes, because remember what they're saying is that essentially at her and Jodi's word, it was like, you have to leave here, you can't be here, you can't have contact, I can reach out to you, you can't reach out to us. You know, he didn't know the kids had been even taken out of town or at Jody, any of this stuff, right? It's all a surprise to him. And so to get a call out of the blue and be like, oh yeah, by the way, cops are on the way over, I need you to come try and get the kids, which he's not. He's now in a custody battle trying to get them back, right? That didn't happen for obvious reasons. So that's a shocker. But now again, a lot of people are kind of like, okay, there's almost like two events. There's the event of, you've been estranged from her for a year, you have no contact or very little and that type thing at her discretion. All this is going on behind the scenes. And then what was the household like before that, when they were living together and leading up to this whole thing of, you have to get out of the house and all that, with some of this very questionable behavior that was going on that was part of, 8 passengers going away.
And he said, well, how long have you been in Ivans? He wasn't even told that she had taken the kids to Ivans.
And this is what I'm talking about, this level of keeping him in the dark. And again, if this allegation is true, only time will tell, court will tell. But if this is true, it's like, okay, so the kid's been taken out of town, they're at Jody's. I mean, again, can you imagine getting that phone call? Yeah, one of your kids escaped this Jody woman, your therapist, their house, shackled up, basically, starved, malnourished, and went to a neighbor's for police. Could you come run over? I mean, okay.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because she told him it was better that they needed to work on their marriage and needed to keep their family together, but that everything was better off with him.
Now we're going to see this same story come up time and time again from different men who have been victimized by Jody. And so to sit here and then see the same story playing out in the home of Ruby and Kevin, I have no doubt that that's probably the way it went down. My question is, well, what about the stuff leading up to that? Like, was that are they saying that was under the direction of Jody as well? I don't know, right? If we remember, Jesse spoke out, and Jesse is related to Jody, and Jesse suffered at the hands of Jody at one point during their life. Same type story coming up, same type MO, meaning coming from Jody, of this level and tactic of manipulation and victimization of people. So one thing I find very peculiar about this is just how much of this relates back to Jody, and how so many different people have the exact same story about her.
I probably shouldn't go into that. That's pretty private.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say they had a difference of opinion about their family.
Parenting? I know you can't talk about it, but is it that kind of where we're going?
Correct.
Now, he'll get more into this during the next interview. Not his interview, but somebody else from Law and Crime. We'll get to it in a minute. But this is me, and again, this is just my opinion right here. I think this is the MO that goes down with whoever it is, because hearing from these other men, it's the same type thing where Jody is essentially giving direction to the female. And then those two are saying, hey, look, this is the drill. If you want A, B, and C to happen, whatever it might be for that specific couple, but this seems to be the pattern of, you need to get out, no contact, all of this. And then the ball is in the male's court at that point. Are they going to, go along with this type thing? Now we'll learn that, Kevin's basically like, look, Jody was my therapist. I trusted her. And so I was going along with this thinking this was the road to reconciliation. And I think that a lot of the dudes seem to have that same type story. Now, side note, and especially when we look at this interview, on a lot of them, and again, you see the lives that are destroyed. And again, if these allegations are true and everything comes out where it's like, yeah, you know what, there's a lot of brainwashing, this is like cultish type stuff, Jody's at the center of it, yada, yada, yada. Imagine the damage to all the various relationships of the guy coming back around and, like, can you trust your spouse again? That they went down this road of this. Or is it like, well, you know what, we were both really taken in by this person, that kind of thing. But overall, the absolute damage that has been done, not just to relationships, but to lives, the things that was done, the things being done and done to these children is absolutely unacceptable, right? I mean, 100%. And I'm still talking about looking at these videos from Ruby, talking about she left her lunch, she can't have food, you don't have a bedroom, you're never getting your phone back. I mean, I bet if you breathed wrong in that house, you had like some major, like, no oxygen for you for 3 months, kind of a thing where it's like, bro, like, we kind of need that to live.
But what people don't understand is that he was trying to preserve his marriage. He was taking direction from her. She's the one who asked him to leave the house and indicating that in order for him to be able to get back together with her and be a family, that she was requesting that he leave the home and that he not contact them or the children. Later told him that everything was blissful at home. It was so much better without him.
Now imagine going through all this and like this therapy with Jody, and they kind of gang up on you and they're like, look, you need to get out of the house, this is how we're going to fix this, and then hearing from them, oh yeah, things are wonderful here without you were definitely the problem. And this is the part that really irritates me, and we see this in so many cases with these personality types that are victimizing all these people but gaslighting them into thinking that they're the ones who are the issue when it's them, right? And we're going to hear some stuff coming from the side of, not from Jody's side, but just about her, that is very consistent throughout every story, where I'm just like, oh, this is like a monster who convinces everyone else that they are the monster. But how deflating to get a phone call to hear the family's doing great without you. I mean, how do you come back from that?
Emotionally, she was controlling him because she knew how much he valued their marriage and valued their family, and it was his desire to be able to get back with the family and preserve his marriage. So he was taking direction from her, and her direction was, it's so much better off, and I think we can salvage our marriage if you just, for now, don't have communication with the kids, and I will communicate with you. I'll reach out to you when we need to have communication.
And then therein lies the issue also of, I'll reach out to you, you don't reach out to us. Like, I'm in control of all of that. And that's the slippery slope that clearly took place with this. Because again, what he's alleging, and we'll hear this from his lawyer in a minute, and a different thing, is Jody was our trusted therapist. Like, I thought that, I trust all these people to be doing the right thing. And so we put all that trust, and you do want to be able to think that you can trust your spouse at minimum, you know what I'm saying? And on top of that, your therapist, but definitely your spouse, to do what's right by your children, especially, right? So then to find out, and again, we're going based right now on taking the story at face value that his lawyer's saying, right? We're not questioning it right now. This is all based on this of, okay, he went with it, essentially brainwashed, that type thing. Okay, I'm gonna just trust that I'm the issue, I won't reach out, that kind of a thing. And then to turn out that this level of abuse was going on, I mean, my God, that's heartbreaking.
Figure out a way between he and Ruby to reunite their family. He would have been down there in 2 seconds.
Do they
he just
currently
had no idea?
He had no idea. He had no idea that this was going on.
No, physical abuse had never been a part of their family.
Okay, now this part I found interesting, because when he's like, no, physical abuse had never been part of their family. Now this is, and it could just be a choice of words and whatnot, but the issues that came forth during 8 Passengers, where people were like, girl, like, you're starving the kids out, you know what I'm saying? Like, this questionable behavior and like the way the children are being treated, it's almost like, did we purposely avoid mental or emotional, that word, abuse? Those words, you know what I'm saying? But it just went with, there's definitely not been physical abuse in the household before Jody. The other stuff is questionable, right? Because that's one concern with Ruby, is that watching these past videos and all this coming to the surface, which, I mean, again, people put out a petition, they weren't happy about this either. And seeing just like the kids and how unhappy they were in these videos, and she's like gloating, talking about taking things away and withholding food and just stuff that seemed really inappropriate, especially when you break it down to the level of, this is a grown woman holding either a phone or a camera in front of her and making content out of something that is not only humiliating for the children, but just not right. When you start messing with like hunger striking a kid because they did something wrong. No, not a cute look.
But a lot of the dynamics between he and his wife changed after Jody Hildebrand partnered up with Ruby.
Well, you can say that again. And so many people have this same MO right here, the same story of Jody came in the picture and everything got real freaky.
What does he say about Jody Hildebrand?
That she's manipulated him in conjunction with Ruby, that she's been kind of the spearhead toward essentially destroying his life and destroying his family.
And again, we hear this from various men and women from different walks of life, right, saying the same thing about her. One thing that I found interesting about this case is how much of it has now circled back to Jody, right? It's like Ruby is like the face of it, because I mean, these are her children escaping from the home, right? I'm not saying that she is not to be held accountable for any of this stuff. Clearly in the wrong here. But literally, how many people have come out against Jody and the atrocious things that they are saying that she's done to them. Now, what I want to do is watch one of these little interview clips, a few clips of an interview with a guy. Just listen to the story that he's telling, right? It's very reminiscent of what we've been hearing.
Finally, in one of the group meetings, I got up and I just said, "This is off."
Warner claims Hildebrand would use shaming tactics to turn husbands and wives against each other, adding that she would convince...
There was a man that had successful business that believed that he was a danger to his wife and his family because he did a double take. As a woman, like if he saw a beautiful woman, he would see and he'd look again. This guy got his own apartment and separated from his family because he was a danger.
Y'all, this right here is what I'm talking about. Okay, everyone has the same thing. He's literally describing this whole thing that we keep hearing from everybody, including from Kevin, right? Now, again, I'm not trying to sit here, and I don't want to come off like I am giving Kevin a complete free pass, because, and you'll see this, you probably already have gathered it, but as we continue on more, because I do have these questions of, well, what was going on before Jody came in the picture, right? Like, what was going on behind closed doors then? That's the questions I have, and again, it could be nothing, right? I don't know, because there's this level where, and we'll hear in the interview where it's almost like Kevin's aligning himself to also basically be a victim of this. Now, not to the same extent like his children are and that kind of a thing. He's trying to get them back. He's trying to do the right thing. But what I've seen so much of and that I do agree with is it's like, well, there's two versions here. There's the, before Jody and after Jody. And so how does all that equal out?
They felt so sick and like such a failure that they just felt like they shouldn't be here anymore.
This is so sad. Going in and convincing these men that it's like you're a failure to your family, you shouldn't be here, go away, go get an apartment, whatever. I mean, what's the point? And again, the different stories, this is where I just think that, I don't know what you call it when people like enjoy like inflicting pain, whether it's physical or emotional, whatever. I mean, an abuser, I guess, but there's like, whether it's sadistic or, I don't know the word. But it's almost like she got some form of pleasure from this because it's so similar, the stories that so many people have. Now we're gonna watch another interview with Kevin's lawyer. This is the most recent one that came out, and the reason why I was like, I need to re-record this video. So let's just continue on. It goes a little bit more in depth with some of the information.
He says his client had no idea his children were being abused and instead points the finger at Jody Hildebrand, alleging she brainwashed the entire family.
That once she got involved in their lives, it just destroyed his family.
Now, again, we've been hearing this, consider this a secondary, forming the foundation of the video, but here we go, confirmation, she destroyed the family. You're going to see now more in this interview, it's more direct, Jody did it. Jody's fault. We can start to see the shift of blame. Now, and it might be, right? There's too many people that have come out with this. We don't know the whole story yet. We need to see all the evidence come out, not just of Jody, but also beforehand, right? And be like, okay, we need the entire picture here. And as we'll learn, remember, Kevin's trying to get his kids back, right? So he's going to be very hush-hush about a lot of stuff right now. For that reason only, what I'm saying? Like he number one, doesn't want to incriminate himself. Number two, is trying to get his kids back, right? So there's that. Let's keep going.
It did. And he's now trying to recover from that and put it back together. He wants it back the way it was.
So this is confirmation he's trying to put his family back together, so on and so forth. Let's continue.
In recent days, Kevin Franke has stopped speaking with his estranged wife, Ruby, after she dropped bombshell news on him during a jailhouse phone call.
He hasn't spoken to Ruby for about 2 weeks now.
So he did speak with her after her arrest, it sounds like then.
He spoke with her, I think there are reports out there actually. He spoke with her a week ago Friday, and that was when he started to realize the broad perspective of the deception that he'd been fed.
I would have given good money to be a fly on the wall for that phone call. Let's be honest. Okay. I mean, come on. Now, they're not going to say it was on the phone call, right? But clearly he was like, yeah, this stuff is true. I heard some more bombshell stuff. This is getting really bad. Oh, we're done. You're done. You're done.
And in that discussion, found out a lot of things from her that he should have been told. He should have been involved. And after the phone call, he just decided that he'd been deceived and hasn't had contact with her since.
So it sounds like, again, if these allegations are true, this was maybe his aha moment. Again, remember, we're going based on, we're taking it face value, right? Yes, we are questioning some of the other stuff, but right now with these things the lawyer's saying, we're going face value. You know, because I have no doubt that this is kind of how some of this went down. Other things become questionable. But this moment of wait a minute, so this is true. This person I trusted with all of this stuff, our kid, not stuff, but you know what I'm saying, our kids, our marriage, you know, all these things. And this turns out like, oh my God, like I don't even know you, right? I mean, can you imagine?
In fact, Kevin Franke hasn't even discussed the abuse allegations with his wife.
His backing off from communication with Ruby was because he felt betrayed, he felt deceived, and so he didn't feel like that it would merit any further consultation and discussion between them. But I don't know. He may be following the proceedings, but they're pretty inaccessible. Neither one of us have been willing to drive 250 miles just to go to a short hearing, and it's my understanding that the WebEx links have crashed, and so I just gather information and give it to him about what's going on.
Now he's talking about, you know, the WebEx thing. It sounds like, you know, anyone can get on there and it kind of crashes the thing. We see this oftentimes in cases. And, you know, okay, what are these short proceedings? I mean, I know how that goes. Again, it's just this entire unfortunate scenario where they have all these children that are at the center of some severe allegations, and it'll be interesting to see if he is able to get custody back of them, because again, there's going to be lots of questions that come up. Remember, in the last thing, one of her not the last court appearance, but one of the custody ones, where Ruby put a bunch of bombshell information out there about some of the kids and things they've been doing to each other and other children. What do you do with that, right? And the fact that she would put that out there, I'm like, really? Now again, do we know if it's true? I don't know, right? I don't know. I'm not in the family. I don't know. I'm not her. But these are things that I'm like, does Kevin know about this? You know, is it true? You know, is he like, this is news to me as well? I mean, these are things we want to know.
Yeah, that's fair. As far as what Ruby has said to Kevin, has she denied these allegations and said it didn't happen?
They have not had that conversation.
Is there a reason why?
I think because it's pretty apparent to Kevin from the reports that it did happen. He believes his son, and the reports that his son has given to law enforcement and others.
So there you go. He believes his sons. He believes it's happened, and therefore we're not even questioning her. Now, also remember, she is in jail. If we've learned anything from like Corey Richins, you don't talk about your case on the phone. You don't write letters and books about it, right? So, you know, Ruby is doing that okay, at least for her own self-preservation, I guess. Not that we're really that concerned about that. We're concerned about justice for the children. Now, with Kevin, I do think it's interesting. It's like, yeah, we just haven't talked about it because it's a no-brainer, right? The evidence is there. When your child escapes a home of your therapist with duct tape bound to them and they're malnourished and abused, talking about we haven't seen mom, call the police, I mean, what more is there to say, right? Besides, where are the divorce papers? Where are the custody papers? We going to court.
According to Kester, Kevin Franke had no idea what was going on with his children and hadn't even spoken to them in months.
He was shocked, devastated, hurt, felt deceived, didn't know any of that was going on. He hadn't seen his kids for 12 months or more, and didn't know that they were even in Ivins in southern Utah. He didn't even know that they'd been taken down there, or he probably would have objected strongly, but she didn't tell him, and apparently took the kids down there even as early as June, and he knew nothing about it.
So again, just reiterating, knew nothing about this. This was a shock. Oh my gosh, completely in the dark. You know, that part, I mean, think about these other stories we're hearing, like the dude in the interview where he's like, oh, well, his wife convinced him that, you know, or Jody convinced him, you know, that he was this, he had to get an apartment, he was horrible, so on and so forth, you know, all these terrible things, you know. It's just weird to me to be able to just go away with zero contact, right? And I get that it's like, well, that's what I was being told to do. I thought that's what I had to do. But I just am like, wow, that seems like it would be really difficult to do.
Kevin very much loved his children and loved his wife and had a strong bond, an exceptionally strong bond with all of his kids. You've seen pictures of their family together. He was involved in all sorts of activities. He was a great dad. But Ruby felt like there were differences in their marriage, and at one point, in conjunction with Jody Hildebrand, it was sort of like, we have to separate to save our marriage. You know, we'll keep working on our marriage, but for now, you know, if we're gonna repair our marriage and be back together as a family, you have to be away, and you have to work on yourself, and don't have contact with the kids. Don't have contact with me unless I initiate it.
I mean, there you go. This is so extreme. So extreme. And I guess I just come back to this where I'm like, what is the point? And this is coming from Jody's perspective, because again, remember, we're all pivoting this blame onto Jody, right? And I say we all, just like the people we're hearing from and whatnot, her victims. So I just sit here and question, what is her motive to do this with all these men? I mean, it almost makes you wonder if she was after their wives.
Pretty close to a year and a half. I think January, February of 21, maybe August of 21 is the last time anyone posted anything on there.
Is there a reason that they stopped creating content with the 8 Passengers channel so long ago?
I think that Jody and Ruby sort of just pirated off that and moved into this Connections entity.
Now that part's interesting. He's talking about the last time somebody posted on 8 Passengers. Now, again, I never watched this and whatnot, but I'm like, isn't it because everyone started freaking out because of her parenting tactics? And that's what I'm talking about, where it's like, okay, I didn't know abuse was going on. I had moved out, And it's like, well, what about the stuff before? Like, that's what I see a lot of people conjuring up these questions. And so I want to see if that gets answered of, okay, well, look, we get it. Let's say no physical abuse, this is a shock, all this kind of stuff, you know, but what about these other tactics? Was there anything that was like involving some kind of CPS situation beforehand? Because literally people were beside themselves and petitioning to get this channel shut down over stuff that Ruby was doing on there. I mean, that's videotape evidence on your YouTube channel, you know what I'm saying?
Some critics are saying, how could you not know? How could you spend this much time without speaking to your kids? What does he have to say about that?
He was following the advice of who he thought was a professional mental health expert, telling him to stay away. The only way to save his family was to stay apart from his family at that point, while he thought they were working toward reconciliation. He had no idea that there was this kind of abuse going on. She was telling him that everything was blissful and everything was wonderful. That, in conjunction with the fact she didn't tell him that she had taken the kids to southern Utah to be in Jody's home. He would have resisted that, but she didn't tell him. He was being advised by his mental health care professional to stay away from the family and not contact the kids.
I mean, can you imagine? I shouldn't say that I would be curious to sit in on her sessions, because I feel like we have now at this point with so many people coming out. And the things that Jody's doing during these sessions, I'm like, I mean, my gosh, again, what a vile person, right? To instruct families to do this. It's like someone, again, these are just my opinions. I don't know personally her and whatnot or her motivations, but it just seems like somebody who's so miserable within themselves, they want to make everyone else that. And also a power dynamic. Look at the level of power that people are handing over to her. Okay, I'm the problem. I'll move into an apartment. I won't contact my family. I mean, who says that, right? I mean, can you imagine if you've ever been to a therapist or any form of that? Can you imagine them telling you that? Like, oh yeah, quit talking to your kids and stuff? I mean, come on.
Kester does say before his wife's arrest, Kevin Franke received counseling from Hildebrandt.
During the separation, Kevin was attending men's groups that were facilitated by Jody, and during those groups, he was being downgraded and diminished, and told how bad he was, and that he needed to repent, and that the best way to repent was to not infect his family with his problems, and so that's why you need to stay away. He wasn't the only one in those men's groups that was undergoing exactly what he was undergoing at her suggestion and recommendation.
A men's group run by Jody Hildebrandt. Can't roll my eyes hard enough at that.
Just so I get a better idea of what these men groups are, would that be, what would that entail? They're going to like a group and kind of talking about things? Who are the people who are kind of like laying down the law, so to speak?
Jody.
Oh, she enjoyed every second of that, telling a group of men what to do and that they're horrible. I mean, to me, it just seems like that's what her MO was. Like, she had this thing against men, and that it was like, I'm going to destroy them and their families' lives.
And they were Zoom meetings. I don't think they ever met together personally, even though maybe a sponsor of someone would meet personally, but sporadically.
And a Zoom meeting at that, right? You wouldn't even meet in person. I mean, I'm just like, my gosh, but this is the thing. So much power was given over to this woman. And remember, other interviews and whatnot that we've watched is if you question this stuff, she would start destroying you. I mean, clearly she did anyways, right? It was almost like no matter what, once you were in the clutches of this, you were getting destroyed and emptying your bank account in the process. Always follow the money.
I asked whether Kevin wants to speak, and your reply was interesting to me in that you said Kevin does want to speak, just not now.
Correct.
So, if not now, when?
When the dust has kind of settled. He just doesn't want to jeopardize. He doesn't want to say something because we've committed to the court. We're not going to disparage any of the family. And Kevin's gone above and beyond that. He's not only not disparaged anyone, he's reaching out to try to bring this family closer together and to kind of heal wounds.
Now, this is a very tricky situation he's in because just like his lawyer said, he's trying to get the kids back, so he has to be very delicate with what he says, what story he says. So I don't blame him. I wouldn't be getting out there and talking myself either. Everything would be done through a lawyer, and he's going to have to spin a certain narrative because, again, if they're in custody with this and all this stuff has come out, they're going to be looking back at this stuff over 8 passengers and being like, what about this? Your child left her lunch, did you know about that? What about this? Your wife, you didn't provide a bedroom for one of your sons for 6 months. Did you know about that? They're going to start questioning all this stuff, right? And that's where it might become a little tricky. Now, as we know, okay, when the sad thing about these situations is, number one, is the children at the center of it, right? Families are destroyed, and the children are at the center of it. They have a whole life ahead of them. They didn't ask for this stuff to be done to them, right? They are at the whim of the adults in their lives, and these are the choices that the adults made. I'm especially thinking of Jody right here, but for Ruby and possibly Kevin to allow, again, we don't know how much Kevin knew about what was going on specifically with the kids and Jody in that dynamic of when he was gone, but especially Ruby to allow someone like Jody to make these decisions and watch after the kids and clearly treat them this way is absolutely inappropriate and criminal, right? So only time will tell. But when the children are thrust into this and they're put into different, homes and CPS gets involved, I mean, you see how many times we see what happens in those scenarios. It's not good in any direction.
It's a very delicate situation. These kids have been horribly brainwashed, indoctrinated, and it's scary.
Brainwashed by who?
Jody.
Do you believe that Ruby was brainwashed by Jody?
Yes. And I say that because everyone, the focus has been on Kevin. Where was he? Why was he absent? How does that all happen? So he was doing that at Ruby's direction, who I think was being directed by Jody. This is the way that you've got to repair your marriage and repair your family. So they were all sort of kind of being manipulated, and this is just my opinion, by Jody. And I think she knew what she was doing, and it was causing significant damage. And so when Kevin's critics are out there saying, where was he? He was acting at the direction of what he thought was a competent mental health care provider and advisor. And to me, the better question is, what kind of mental health care provider would advise a family and a husband and wife and a husband and or a father and children that this can repair your family if you just stay away from each other?
Now, again, this whole thing of like the level of brainwashing that was going on in this narrative and whatnot will be very interesting to see how the evidence plays out with it, because I have no doubt, again, my first thought is, okay, what have the kids been told and exposed to? Number one, we see the videos that how Ruby was in these videos with them. Then you get to the point of all the stuff we're finding out with Jody, right? So it's like, okay, how much psychological, physical, and emotional damage has been done to these kids, and how do we start getting them into services and whatnot? Remember, the one of the older kids had posted that Instagram photo of the cop outside her home, saying finally when the cops were coming and stuff like this. So clearly, this is an ongoing issue for a while.
And he was desperate to have that come back together, but it was Jody's intervention that prevented that, and it was manipulating him, saying, if you just do this, if you just overcome your greed and your selfishness and your narcissism, you will get your family back together, but you got to stay away and you got to repent.
The thing that makes me so disgusted with the hypocrisy of this is because these are the exact things she was doing and grifting the whole time. You know what I mean? Like her own narcissism, her own greed. It only lined her pockets to convince these men that they were the reason their families were destroyed, and to separate them, and you have to do this, and oh, by the way, cough, cough, it's a couple of grand a month. I mean, come on. Like the lowest of low.
But there's a lot to be told. There's a lot of chapters in this book, and the more I dig into it, the more I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think that Jody is in the middle of all this, and I describe her as an onion with an octopus inside. The more layers you peel back about Jody's life and connections, every time you peel back a layer, an octopus tentacle comes springing out.
So Jody is an octopus. Okay, she's an octopus. We got it. She's an octopus. But I mean, he's right. It's just literally next level, but isn't that the way these cases seem these days, where it's like, I mean, look at Lori Daybell, Letitia, I mean, you name it, right? Where you just peel these layers back and you're like, what? It gets worse and worse and worse, and this level of just abuse that goes so deep. And that's what we're seeing with this right here, where it's like, I'm just shocked at the stories that people are coming forth with. Now, also, what's good with the stories people are coming forth with is this seems to be what's going to finally take Jody down, because people are literally frightened of this woman, right? And it just seems so funny to me, not funny, but, peculiar, and not even peculiar. I don't know what the word is, but it's, I guess, good that this is being exposed, because the level of victimization, I mean, this feels culty. We were brainwashed, we were this, I mean, this feels very Waco, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm just like, this girl needed to be taken down a while ago, but people are petrified of her, right? So what we're going to have to do is just see. I think that we'll obviously get our answers, because eventually we're going to find out if he gets custody of the children, and what needs to happen is whatever's best for the children, wherever they can safely go, that they will not be exposed to this level of abuse, manipulation, psychological, physical, all that stuff again, because they've already gone through that. Now, obviously, we don't want them to then get thrown in some system where they're shuffled around and their lives become even worse. only time will tell. But I'm curious, what do you think of the Kevin story? You know, again, if you're still here, first of all, thank you. You know, but I view it in the two contexts of, okay, so the kids go away, there's no contact, you know, you're going based on what, you know, Jody says, so your wife is doing all this crazy stuff that you allegedly have no concept of, you know, but then what about the stuff prior? Were you privy to all this behaviors and stuff? I would think so. Just like I said, it's on a YouTube channel. It was their channel. It was their livelihood. You know what I mean? So the content was made around this bizarre parenting stuff that was a little bit out there. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section. Now, usually I say Roscoe would ask you to drop some sofas there, and he did just telepathically hit me up, and he was like, hey Dad, tell him to drop some sofas. So go on, drop some sofas in the comments for Roscoe back home. And until we meet to hang out in those little tiny miniature sofas in the little tiny comment section, we'll see you there.